So, hey everyone, I'm here with Melissa Hong. Melissa is a web developer, community leader with Wix, and also the founder of OMG Code, which is a development company that provides a variety of different services involving web development, app design, development solutions, all sorts of stuff like that. I'm going to sit down with Melissa and we're going to talk a little bit about her background and how she came to Wix initially. So, thank you for taking the time to talk with me, Melissa.
Of course, Rob.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Tell me a little bit about your background. I know you were kind of in the medical field for a while. You were studying to become a doctor, but then made a jump
Hmm.
into tech. How did that happen, and
Right.
what kind of motivated that decision initially?
Sure. So I guess we can talk about when I was a teenager, like I was
Yeah.
around 14 or so. It was when I kind of got into, when I first got introduced into like HTML and what websites are. And I was just so enamored by the whole thing. Like I just would work on like websites on my own and then just stay up until like the early mornings just
Mhm.
trying to create. And then that passion I don't think ever died. And when I went to school, I just kept thinking about it. And then when I finally, I decided for some reason not to pursue that path at the moment. But I mean, I think everything in life happens for a reason. So when I went to medical school, and then I noticed when I was going, the further I went down that path, I realized it wasn't a passion of mine. I still wanted to help people, but not in that aspect. So I kind of decided to, take a step back. I realized I wasn't happy. I was thinking always constantly of leaving the hospital. Like that's the only thing I thought about was like, oh, how long do I have to be here until I
Mhm.
have to leave? And I knew that that wasn't, that's not a normal behavior or something that I want to feel every single time. So I decided to take a break. And when I was on my break, I was thinking about my past and what I had interested in. And I remembered that I used to, love doing website design and just develop in general. So I decided, why don't I pursue that? And then I decided to enroll in Coding Dojo, which is a boot camp, a coding boot camp. And from there, I realized, I had the same level of passion as before. Like I just wanted to just keep going and going. And that's how where it took me today, I
Cool.
guess.
Yeah, absolutely. What were some of those first sites that you were making in your teenage years? Like what were you building?
Well, it wasn't advanced. I mean, it was like off of Yahoo GeoCities.
Yeah.
You remember that long ago.
Yep. Yeah. Totally.
But and
That's
they
super
had their
cool.
like page builder and stuff.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, and so what kind of technologies were you working with at the boot camp early on
Uh-huh.
too?
Yeah, I think I was working with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So I was familiar with, HTML and JavaScript. I don't think there was CSS back then, but when I
Wow.
was learning it. So,
Cool.
or I wasn't aware.
Hmm.
And
Um,
then I learned Python and other things, but go ahead.
yeah, I was just gonna kind of keep going. So yeah,
Yeah.
when did OMG Code start? How did you make
Hmm.
the transition to kind of going from the boot camp to starting the agency? Were you working for other
Yeah.
companies at that point, or as a freelancer? What was that like?
Hmm. Well, after the boot camp, I decided to just, take my chances of trying to go as a freelancer.
Hmm.
There was always, the normal track is to go and, try to find a company to have, hire you and things like that. But I decided to, take an alternative route to try freelancing. And so I was on Upwork and I noticed, more and more that people were interested in, website design and development in Wix. And it just kind of grew from there, I guess.
Hmm.
And then I noticed that at a certain point, I needed to hire people because the demand was just so high that I didn't have enough hours in the day
Yeah.
to, to work. So I had to start, my agency around 2020 or so.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's often how it goes. People start as freelancers and then
Yep.
form agencies from that when they realize the workload that they're getting, they just don't know what to do with it. Um,
Exactly.
that's cool. So you were using Wix initially too to build sites
Yeah,
and
I
stuff as a
think
freelancer.
Exactly. And then I notice, now more than ever, like that's the majority of my work is that the demand has gotten so high that it's like 90% of my projects now.
Cool.
Yeah.
Are you using the Wix marketplace at all? I know a lot of
Mhm.
community leaders we speak to are getting a lot of business from the marketplace.
That marketplace is gold.
Yeah, awesome.
It's really like, yeah, it's definitely worth everything to get to that marketplace and to, strive to get into there. Um, I would say a good flow of my business or my leads for clients come from there. And then the other part comes from Upwork as well. So,
Cool. Yeah,
yeah.
that's good to know. Um, yeah, so one thing that I am always interested in is
Mhm.
Wix kind of prides itself on like being easy to use, the kind of drag and drop, you know, editor and stuff. But
Mhm.
increasingly, people are turning to Velo and to JavaScript to kind of build on some of that functionality with custom
Right.
solutions. So yeah, I wanted to see maybe when did you start using Velo, or when did you get to a place where you realized that you maybe
Mhm.
wanted to combine kind of some of the simplicity of Wix with maybe your background in the boot camp, or as a more traditional
Mhm.
developer?
Well, I was using Velo when it used to be called Corvid.
Yeah.
Before the whole COVID thing happened,
Yep.
we had to switch over because of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember like originally the clients were just like, oh, let me just do website design. But then I noticed more and more they're like, oh, I need some custom functionality. And
Hmm.
so I kind of just got pushed into it because of the client demand. Like they just wanted these custom features and functions. And I had known JavaScript from the boot camp. So when I decided to go into the code of Wix, they were like, oh, but there's also Corbid. And I was like, what is that? Or Velo now.
Hmm.
And then I just started to look at the documentation and reading on it. And there was tutorials and there's this huge community with like the forums and things. So that really helped kind of lower the learning curve when you're trying to learn Velo, is that you have all these great resources out there, and then even the documentation itself has great examples. So it's really easy to learn, I think.
That's really cool to hear too. What
Mhm.
kind of custom solutions were your clients asking for at that point?
Oh my gosh, that was so long ago.
Mhm.
Probably just, certain like animations, probably, and then relating it to like connecting it to the database and having it look custom, like instead of the store that the Wix has out of the box, they
Mhm.
wanted to create their own custom store and their own custom, product page and things. So they wanted to do that.
Okay.
So it kind of went into that direction. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I think Wix
Mhm.
data and the databases kind of thing is a big reason that a lot of people adopt Velo and Wix code and all of that early
Mhm.
on. Um, but yeah, I think as OMG code has grown, it seems like you're doing a lot
Mhm.
of Wix development. Are there Wix APIs that you're coming back to again and again with Velo?
I'm always looking at the API
Yeah.
documentation. But I would say like Wix bookings is used a lot, Wix members, Wix data. I'm trying to think of the other ones that they have in there. Usually those ones I come across, and then the store,
Mhm.
and then sometimes like the emails and things like that. So yeah, I just honestly I use all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Um, yeah. Are there um, I don't know, any limitations with it that you've encountered, where you've used another service
Mhm.
or another third party, or anything like that, like points of friction where we could maybe improve or stuff like that?
Yeah, well, it's not really
Hmm.
anything that I think Wix can really do in terms of like the speed of it. I think it's just, we have these clients that are wanting, for example, like Wix Hotel API. I just came across that.
Yeah.
And, they wanted to have like a custom solution for that, but that hasn't been fully developed yet, I think, from the Wix side, because I see on the requests like how many requests you guys get for certain things. And I know that that was one of them. So it's not like you aren't, I don't think Wix is not trying to go in that direction, I think
Mhm.
eventually you'll get there. It's just it takes time to build a whole API system, I'm sure.
Yeah, definitely. But it's cool that you're aware of kind of the requests that we're getting and that kind of stuff. How involved would you say that
Hmm.
you are in the broader Wix community? I know you're community leader, but
Hmm.
we have the forum that we use for kind of
Hmm.
guiding the documentation a little bit. We get a lot of feedback there.
Hmm.
What are some of the resources that you're using as you're building sites? And
Hmm.
yeah, how involved are you with the community there?
Well, I
Mhm.
used to before I got so busy.
Yeah.
I would go into like the Discord channel and have a little bit of, and also on the forums I would respond. But now that I don't have as much time, I'm not nearly there as much anymore. But I still use I would say the forums whenever I come across a solution that doesn't seem intuitive, that I'll just
Mhm.
go in and see who else has, encountered a coding problem like I have. And then that usually gets, some of the ideas going. So I'm constantly still using the forum, and I think it's such a great asset
Yeah,
um,
totally.
for that reason.
Mhm.
It's like the Stack Overflow for Wix.
Yeah. And we've done a few
Really.
like we get questions on Stack Overflow from time to time too. It's just hard to
Yeah.
keep up with so much of that. Um
Mhm.
cool. Uh yeah, you mentioned kind of some growing pains with OMG code and just having so much
Mhm.
work kind of coming in either from the Wix marketplace or from elsewhere. How have you kind of handled that scaling the business as time has passed and you've grown?
Yeah, I mean, it's
Yeah.
scaling the business when when you're a startup or when you're just starting, you just kind of have to kind of go with the flow of things, and you just kind of learn along the way. But I noticed that for me, my hard part is delegation, is the fact that I'm so protective of my quality of work that I
Hmm.
don't want to, pass that onward to someone else. But I noticed that I kind of have to let go sometimes and give another developer a chance to also learn from it, and then also grow, and give them that opportunity. So I decided to start an internship program for two individuals, and so that's starting. I'm actually right now doing it, so I'm just kind of slowly being like, okay, what if I train
Hmm.
these interns and let them go through like my own makeshift boot camp, then maybe in the end they'll be able to, then I will feel better about my quality control because I'm the one that's providing the training and things like that. So that's hopefully they're going to be able to take the Velo certification and then be Velo certified, and then I'll feel really a lot more confident about
Yeah,
someone's abilities.
that's really cool. Like a whole kind of Velo boot camp almost.
Hmm.
What
Yeah.
kind of stuff are you teaching them? It's all oriented around
Hmm.
Wix and Velo, it sounds like.
Yeah, essentially. So of course, I'm starting with just like Wix, how to use it, and
Hmm.
then JavaScript so that they have like a background, but then having that transition over to, learning Velo and things like that. And then um, I really think that Velo is just like jQuery. I'm not sure if you've ever come across
Yep,
that,
it's
but
been a little while since I've used jQuery. I guess it's not as popular as it used to be, but yeah, I know what you mean.
yeah. Yeah, so I mean, I just kind of, I think like I try to give that transition over, like maybe I'll teach a little bit of, because it's still in the making, my boot camp.
Hmm.
Is I'm just gonna teach them a little bit of jQuery first so that they can be like, oh, it's just like that. So
Yeah.
actually, I think it's easier, but yeah.
And are these students with background maybe in visual design or anything like that? I feel like
Hmm.
one of the places where Wix and Velo really shines is like allowing people who are more visually oriented or used to the drag and
Hmm.
drop editor to kind of learn JavaScript and start to kind of build out
Hmm.
the skills there. Is that kind of what you're experiencing too?
Yeah, I mean, I've experienced it myself. Like whenever I'm doing it, I'm like, wow, I can just like turn on the preview and it's just right there. Like I can have instant feedback on if my code worked or not. So I think that's really convenient. And it's almost like you're working in the Google Inspect editor,
Hmm.
except you're also able to, just do it in Wix. So I really, yeah, I think there was just so many things that I like about Wix and how Velo has come into it versus if I go into something else, it's a little bit more, there's like more steps for me to put in the code and then see it in real time. And that takes a lot of development time to, out of it to do that.
Hmm. Yeah, it is more front end first versus
Mm-hmm.
knowing the code and then building on the front end on top of it.
Exactly.
But that's cool.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I guess, are there any other sort of frameworks that you're working with or development platforms that you're
Mm-hmm.
using in addition to Wix that you find helpful or?
Mm-hmm. So I know related to Wix, they have a node
Mhm.
package
Yeah.
available. So I use that sometimes, like for example, like a Stripe integration, I would use that. So there's some node in there, which is also great that they have that ability as well to use any node package. But I've also been doing, for example, like Python, and completely unrelated,
Yeah.
PHP and Swift and Java. So it's just,
Okay.
yeah, there's just a wide range
Yeah.
of other
Cool.
things. But I think honestly, all programming languages are all the same in a way where when you learn one, you can kind of learn the other. And then they all kind of have the same syntax or like language for
Yeah.
it. So,
Yep. Definitely. Learning what a Boolean is, learning your
mhm,
data
exactly.
types, those translate very, very easily. Yeah.
Mhm,
One question I had too, looking back on how long you've been doing this, what's some advice that you would kind of give to yourself starting out again, making the transition from being a medical student to starting as a
mhm,
freelancer, starting your own agency? Surely you've
right.
learned a lot throughout this process. If you could do it all
Mhm,
over again, would you still follow the same path? What are some things maybe
right.
that you've learned from the experience, etc.?
Mhm. Yeah, so I would recommend having a safety net for
Yeah.
sure before you decide to take a leap and take that risk because any sort of situation like this, there's some risk involved for sure, and having some kind of net that will help you in terms of if something doesn't go completely right, that you have something to fall back on. I remember there was a point in my life where I only had like $100. I had given it to a motel deposit and I was living motel to motel, and it was just so difficult during that period of time to go through, to think about, survival. And you want to
Hmm.
make sure you don't want to get to that point. You want to, make sure that even though you are taking a risk, that it's a smart risk and you need to give yourself some kind of cushion in order for you to make sure that you will succeed in what you're doing, and you do have something to fall back on instead of having an open net with nothing underneath.
Yeah, a lot of undue stress that could be prevented with
Exactly.
just having that net. Cool. And
Mhm,
maybe what advice would you kind of give to other developers who are just, coming to Wix for the first time, just learning code
mhm.
through Wix? Are there any tips and tricks, pointers you have in mind, stuff like that?
If it's the first time going into Wix, I would just say start playing with the editor because it's something that's so amazing just to play with it and be able to take advantage of just how the platform is like, and it's really easy to use, I think, really. And then the other thing would be to look at the documentation that's available for you and be able to take advantage of that, look at the examples, and then if you have even more time, go into YouTube or into the Wix tutorials that they have on the blogs and things like that, and just take advantage of all these great resources that are out there for you to learn. And it's really easy to learn, I think. And then the visuals of the watching videos The tutorials are also really great. So I really don't think it's too difficult to learn, but maybe I'm biased. But I really don't think it's that difficult if you just put in the time and the effort.
Yeah,
So
totally. Well, that was all I have in terms of questions. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. This is a lot of fun.
yeah,